Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Tuesday, February 4th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside today will reach a mild high of 67.3 degrees with a low of 51.5, making it a pleasant winter day in Southern California. Coming up, we'll examine how tariff threats from former President Trump influenced a recent border security agreement. We'll also analyze the potential challenges facing Trump's proposal to eliminate the Department of Education. Plus, we'll explore why artificial intelligence's economic effects aren't being reflected in current economic data, despite the technology's widespread adoption. All this and more ahead on Alex's News. We begin this morning with breaking news on international trade, as the Biden administration reaches a crucial agreement with our North American neighbors. Joining us now with the details is our economic correspondent, Ethan Parker. Ethan, what can you tell us about this development?
Thanks, Grace. According to NBC News, President Trump has just announced a 30-day pause on the planned 25% tariffs that were set to hit imports from both Canada and Mexico. This comes after intense negotiations focusing on border security and the ongoing fight against drug trafficking.
What specific commitments have our neighbors made to secure this pause?
Well, Grace, CNN reports that Canada has made substantial commitments, pledging $1.3 billion to strengthen their border security infrastructure. This includes new helicopters, advanced technology, and additional personnel. They're also taking the unprecedented step of appointing what's being called a fentanyl czar, and will officially designate Mexican drug cartels as terrorist organizations.
And what about Mexico's commitments in this agreement?
According to WDSU News, Mexico has agreed to deploy 10,000 National Guard troops to their northern border. This is specifically aimed at combating drug trafficking, with a particular focus on stopping the flow of fentanyl into the United States.
These tariffs would have had significant economic implications. What were economists projecting?
That's right, Grace. Economic analysts cited by CNN were warning that these tariffs could have potentially pushed both the Canadian and Mexican economies into recession. Just the announcement of these potential tariffs caused the Dow to drop nearly 600 points. For American consumers, the impact would have been substantial. Economists estimate it could have cost between $800 to $1,000 per person annually, affecting everything from car prices to grocery bills.
How does this compare to previous tariff situations?
According to analysis from Perplexity, we can look back at Trump's 2018-2019 steel and aluminum tariffs as a reference point. Those tariffs reduced U.S. real income by $1.4 billion per month in deadweight losses and cost consumers an additional $3.2 billion monthly in added taxes. Importantly, they didn't achieve their stated goal of significantly protecting American jobs in those sectors.
And what's the political response been to this pause?
Several Republican senators, including Chuck Grassley and Susan Collins, had been vocal critics of the potential tariffs. While the pause has been welcomed, Trump has made it clear that future tariffs remain on the table, particularly with China, depending on how these negotiations progress over the next 30 days.
Thank you for that comprehensive report, Ethan. We'll be sure to keep our viewers updated as this story develops. In our second story this morning, we turn to some significant developments at the U.S. Department of Education. Joining us to discuss this is our Washington correspondent, Chloe Parker. Chloe, what can you tell us about these proposed changes?
According to NPR's reporting, the Trump administration is considering dramatic cuts to the Education Department, with potential executive actions expected as early as this week. We're talking about an agency that currently manages $1.6 trillion in federal student loan debt and employs about 4,400 people with a $79 billion annual budget.
What specific actions are being proposed?
As reported by WVTF, the administration is looking at several major moves. They want to shut down department programs that aren't protected by law, and they're calling on Congress to close the entire Department of Education. Perhaps most immediately impactful, they've already placed at least 74 non-management staff on paid administrative leave.
That's quite significant. Can you tell us more about these staff members who were placed on leave?
According to the Associated Press, these employees have lost access to their government email accounts and were told not to report to the office. What's particularly noteworthy is that many of these staff members had previously attended diversity change agents workshops. Civil rights attorney Subodh Chandra, who's representing some of these employees, believes these actions might violate Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
What's actually possible here? Can the administration make these changes unilaterally?
That's an important question, Grace. The reality is there are significant limitations. NPR's reporting indicates that only Congress can actually close the Department of Education since it was created by congressional act. Additionally, many key programs like Title I and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act have bipartisan support and are protected by statute.
How are these proposed changes being received by the public?
Interestingly, according to polling cited by both NPR and WVTF, most Republicans actually support government education spending. This suggests there could be significant resistance to these dramatic cuts, even from within the administration's own party. Legal experts are anticipating numerous challenges, especially given the narrow Republican majorities in Congress.
Thank you for that comprehensive report, Chloe. We'll certainly be keeping an eye on this developing story. Here are some other headlines. In Georgia, a concerning wave of arrests has drawn international attention, with over 40 people jailed on criminal charges related to anti-government protests. Among those detained is 49-year-old journalist Mzia Amaglobeli, who has been on a hunger strike for 3 weeks. Human rights groups are sounding the alarm over reports of physical abuse and aggressive tactics reminiscent of Russian-style crackdowns. The Greek islands continue to experience significant seismic activity, with hundreds of earthquakes rattling the region since early February. While many residents have evacuated, some tourists are making the most of a uniquely quiet Santorini. Scientists confirm the quakes are tectonic rather than volcanic, though uncertainty remains about future seismic events. In a Manhattan federal courtroom, lawyers for Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni received a stern warning from Judge Louis J. Lyman regarding their public statements about an ongoing legal dispute. The judge threatened to move up the March 2026 trial date if inflammatory comments continue. The case involves allegations of sexual harassment and defamation, with Baldoni seeking $400 million in damages. Former deep-sea treasure hunter Tommy Thompson, who discovered gold worth $100 million from the Central America shipwreck, has won a recent legal battle but remains behind bars. Thompson has been jailed since 2015 for contempt of court after failing to appear at a hearing related to investor lawsuits. In immigration news, Senator Marco Rubio reports that El Salvador has made an unprecedented offer to accept deportees from the United States, regardless of nationality. This unusual proposal would even extend to American citizens involved in violent crimes, marking a potential shift in international deportation policies. For our final story this morning, we turn to a fascinating development in the world of artificial intelligence and economics. Joining us now is our technology and economics correspondent, Ethan Parker, to discuss why the AI community is suddenly very interested in a 160-year-old economic theory. Ethan, what's this all about?
Thanks, Grace. The AI community is buzzing about something called the Solow paradox, named after economist Robert Solow. According to recent analysis from leading economic institutions, this paradox explores why we don't always see immediate productivity gains from major technological advances.
That's interesting, Ethan. How does this relate to our current economic situation?
Well, Grace, according to the latest economic data, we're seeing some intriguing patterns. The third quarter of 2024 showed a 2.2% increase in non-farm business sector labor productivity, with output up by 3.5%. What's particularly noteworthy is that 2023 saw a robust 2.7% productivity growth rate, significantly higher than what we've seen since 2004.
And how does this connect to historical patterns with other technological revolutions?
That's a great question. Looking at historical data, we see similar patterns with other major technological shifts. For instance, during the electricity adoption era from the 1890s to 1920s, it took 20 to 30 years before we saw significant productivity gains. The computer revolution in the 1970s to 1990s showed a similar delay.
What about current projections for AI's impact on productivity?
According to Goldman Sachs analysts, AI could potentially increase U.S. productivity growth by 1.5 percentage points annually over the next decade. However, there are complications in measuring this impact. Traditional metrics often struggle to capture AI's influence on knowledge work and creative fields, and many benefits are intangible, like improved decision-making processes.
When might we expect to see concrete results from AI implementation?
Based on historical patterns and current research, most technology investments typically need 2 to 5 years before showing measurable productivity benefits. This suggests we might not see significant AI-driven productivity gains until the late 2020s or early 2030s.
Fascinating insights, Ethan. Thank you for helping us understand this complex intersection of AI and economics.
Thank you, Grace. And I should note that this analysis draws from multiple sources, including recent economic reports, Goldman Sachs forecasts, and historical data from the Federal Reserve.
That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King, with Claude Sonnet 3.5, the Perplexity API, and the Google Cloud Text-to-Speech API. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.